Hello, everybody. I'm Clark Kent, Superman, Nathaniel, just Nathaniel. Welcome back to another episode of Maladapted Automaton. It's a late episode. I had hoped to have this done by Father's Day for a very specific reason, in the sense that the movie I'm talking about is one of the favorites of one of my absolute best friends who did pass away a couple of years ago. The long story short is that I have a very difficult relationship with my own father. I haven't spoken to my father in well over a decade. Nothing against her. She is a trans woman. She transitioned when I was about 8, which has nothing to do with the fact that she was kind of a lousy parent. At the end of the day, there were some good times. I mean, it's not like it's all bad. But last year, on Father's Day, I decided that, Father's Day was always kind of a bummer. I never really felt like celebrating my own father, which again, I use that term in the biological sense, not necessarily to misgender her, because that's not what I'm about. And I do apologize for my Clark Kent glasses. My lighting is being a little bit difficult, so hopefully the reflections aren't too distracting from the light. I'm trying to keep myself in the right lighting so that doesn't happen. But obviously I'm doing my Clark Kent cosplay because we're talking about Superman the movie, and I backtracking to what I said before I got distracted by the reflection in my own glasses, was that last year on Father's Day, I kind of said I was going to try and reclaim Father's Day for myself by remembering Doc on that day, my friend Dr.James who was a hero to me in very many ways, a hero to a lot of people, really a wonderful man. He was way too young to die, and he was also too young to be my father, but I always thought of him when I read the book Pet Sematary, where there's a line that Stephen King had written that was, Lewis Creed met the man who should have been his father. And in many ways, I always think of Doc in that sense, where I'm kind of like, there's the guy who probably should have been. Not that I would actually consider him a father, and I don't think he would want to consider me a son. We had a couple of awkward conversations, as I've said in social media posts about him over the last couple of years since his passing, that was sort of like, I was like, hey, that was kind of like father and son, and Doc would sort of be like, well, let us never speak of that again. But he was a great man, and he taught me how to tie a tie in Las Vegas. He was actually the guy in my 20s. I hadn't figured out how to tie a tie. He helped me learn that. He was very supportive in academics. Obviously, he was a doctor. He had his PhD. He would always tell me and his students, I have 7 degrees. I think he ended up with 7 by the end. That he would know, I have 7 degrees and I don't know anything, so you teach me. He was very much like, I always equated him to Socrates, if you're familiar with the philosopher Socrates, where he would kind of talk to anybody. And when he did, it would be a very significant conversation. And Socrates was the one who kind of said, I'm paraphrasing, the wise man is a man who admits he knows nothing. I flubbed that line entirely, but hey, I don't do 2 takes. All right, Clark Kent doesn't do 2 takes. But so in that spirit, I wanted to talk about what was one of Doc's favorite movies, if not his favorite movie, which was Superman the movie. I didn't plan this, what happened was I was at the grocery store the day before Father's Day, and I was in the checkout line, sitting there on the side, somebody had decided not to buy it, was this, a Superman Father's Day card. Now, again, I did not plan this, but I was like, man, it's too on the nose, I'm not going to buy it, until I did this. So that had to happen, and so in his honor, I'm going to put this up behind me. As I said, Doc was a huge influence on me in terms of academics. He taught me a lot about how to get around a lot of red tape and bureaucracy in academics. And I would not have finished my degree this past summer a year ago if it hadn't been for Doc constantly saying, no, stick with it, don't give up. No matter how hard it gets, just keep going. And in his honor, I'm trying to get re-enrolled in college again. I want to continue my academics. And Doc was just a huge influence on me on that. So in that, it's going to go here with my degree. It's on there. Also, some memorabilia reminding me of him already, which is a Las Vegas flask. Went to Vegas with Doc probably 3 or 4 times. He loved Las Vegas and he loved gambling. Great, he was a hell of a role model. And next to these 2 shot glasses that were from his wedding to Jess, J-Star. Hi J-Star, miss you. I hope you're doing well. And but yes, and again, I want to make this clear, and it's a weird Freudian thing of like, it's because Jess is not a mother figure to me, but Doc was a father figure. And he used to call me Marty sometimes. I call him Doc. You know, we do occasional Indiana Jones and short round jokes. But this is going to go right here on the memorabilia shelf. Other memorabilia shelves, things you'll see here is, this was given me recently by my girlfriend. Was found by, it's a miniature operation game. It was found, it was given to her by a homeless man. She does, she feeds the homeless every Sunday. She goes out and does charity work. And one of them gave her this trinket. She gave it to me. I put it on the thing. This Roddy Piper thing, all out of bubble gum. This was given me by one of my best friends, Chris Doyle, one of my oldest friends. Ironically, when I was living in Maine, he came to St. Louis, where I now live, on vacation, got this bottle for me, brought it back. It would still have the soda in it if my jerk cats hadn't knocked it off of a high thing and spilled it everywhere. So now it's an empty one. And then of course the community box set, which just sits there because I thought it would make sense to put it next to my degree. So, Superman the movie. Superman was created in 1937, I believe, by it was Jerry Siegel and Joe Shyster and Jerry Siegel. They were 2 Jewish men, 2 young Jewish men who were at the time feeling rather powerless due to what was going on in the late 1930s, a la, you know, the rise of Hitler and the you know, what was happening to the Jewish people, the Holocaust, which of course was making its way over the States. They created a character that they wanted to sort of exemplify the person that they wanted to be. They wanted to make a hero, and to a degree, I think also sort of stick it to the German concept of the Übermensch, which was sort of ripped off from Nietzsche. Nietzsche was not a Nazi. Don't let anybody tell you that he was a Nazi. He was actually a very troubled gay man whose sister was a Nazi. A little off-topic thing there with Nietzsche. But as I said, Nietzsche, I'm not talking about Nietzsche, I'm here to talk about Superman. But they kind of wanted to take the Übermensch thing instead of making it as this. And funny thing is that it took forever for them to get anybody to actually publish Superman. Nobody saw the appeal of Superman. And to this day, there are people who argue there's no appeal to Superman. To that, I have to say, you've got some attitude, mister. Everybody always talks about his boring, invincible hero, you know, which all of them are boring, invincible heroes. If you really break it down, it's not like you read a comic thinking that they're going to lose. And if you do, I'm sorry about the brick that hit you in the head. Sorry, it's a little large. But the concept is still that Superman was made to sort of be this exemplary ideal of what a man could be. And we'll see another one next week in my next episode. But the idea of Superman permeated obviously to this day. I mean, the character is still published today. He's gone through numerous iterations, numerous changes. It was even like kind of a plot point of the mostly regrettable Doomsday Clock comic written by Jeff Johns and drawn by Gary Frank, which was sort of DC's sort of I think well-meaning but mostly misguided attempt to bring Watchmen into the DC universe, which is another whole bag of worms, and also to kind of undo the damage they had done with the New 52, which was an even bigger bag of worms. that maybe we will talk about this season. I actually, some of the DC animated movies are very, most recent DC animated universe movies are based on the New 52 stuff, so and I love a lot of those. So we might cover one of those at some point. In fact, I almost wanted to do the Death of Superman animated movie for this episode, and then realized I was like, well, I'm going to talk about Doc. I don't want to talk about the Death of Superman. So we'll talk about Superman the movie. Which is still probably the best on-screen interpretation of Superman, played by the late, great Christopher Reeve. If you are, in fact, mostly only familiar with the modern, grim, murderous, well, not murderous, but grim engine of destruction that is the modern Superman, played by Henry Cavill. And it's not your fault, Henry, if you're watching. Actually, I think you make a pretty good Superman. We actually haven't had a bad Superman except for one. His name rhymes with Steam Dane, and he was a pretty terrible Superman, and is proven to be an even worse Superman as time goes on. So Dean, if you're watching, I do blame you. It is your fault. And if you don't know why, Google Dean Cain, but don't Google Dean Cain. But the general idea of Superman the movie is that Christopher Reeve, and my point was that if you're mostly familiar with the modern Superman, who is very violent and aggressive and kind of blows up buildings, the David S. Goyer, who wrote Man of Steel, kind of mentioned, like when Superman fights, people die, and it was sort of like, well, actually no, the point is Superman doesn't let anyone die, as best he can. He doesn't smash people through buildings because that would kill a lot of people. But in the Christopher Reeve performance, and I want to talk a little bit more about Christopher Reeve. He plays the characters as everyone's friend, and which was actually his words in an interview when someone asked him, what is Superman to you? And the answer was, he's like, well, he's everybody's friend. It's seen in Superman the movie, if you watch Superman the film movie, and there's a lot of goofy stuff in Superman the movie, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the initial introduction of Superman as Superman is still one of my favorite bits in any superhero movie ever. Beginning with a montage of him flying into Metropolis. He saves Lois Lane in the crashing helicopter. He goes on to stop a cat burglar without throwing a punch. He says, he stops like a boat robbery by bringing the boat to the police station, and then he flies over and he saves a little girl's cat from a tree, and then goes off to save Air Force One. So in between stopping a killer, a boat robbery, and Air Force One, he takes the time to help a little girl out. It's what Superman should be. It's who Superman is. He's not a violent guy. Doesn't want to throw a punch, and he certainly wouldn't be that interested in punching people through buildings. That's not really what he does. But Reeve played him with that attitude in mind, with the attitude of Superman is the guy everybody's friend. He's the guy everybody wants to look up to. He's the man of tomorrow. That's what they call him in DC Comics often enough. He's the guy that shows us what we could be if we decided to use our abilities and our powers for good, to help other people, not for our own gain, as then, which of course is then reflected negatively by Lex Luthor, Superman's arch nemesis, played by Gene Hackman in this film. This film, of course, was directed by Richard Donner, all-time great filmmaker, best known for also maybe The Goonies, quite a few other films. Written initially by Mario Puzo. Now, Mario Puzo, you might know as the guy who wrote The Godfather, the novel. I think he also wrote the screenplay. I'd have to look that up. But he did create The Godfather, where he ended up writing Superman. is anybody's guess. But this was a huge deal. Superhero movies weren't really a thing yet. Certainly not like they are today. If you're a young person, where every other movie now is a superhero character. This was kind of a really big budget production. If you were to watch it now, you might be like, "Oh, this is so dated," and it is. It absolutely is. The effects were phenomenal at the time. They're not quite so much anymore. We've gone far beyond it, but and a lot of things don't work about the movie. Let's be honest. If you were to make this movie today, everybody would kind of laugh at it. And there's this stuff to laugh at. A notable scene of Lois Lane, played by Margot Kidder. Superman comes to an interview at her house. He says he's there to talk to her about who he is, why he's there. The inevitable kind of flirtation happens, and he asks her to take a flight with him, and he brings her up into the sky, and they're like holding hands. And he kind of lets her drop at one point, which ladies, if your first date ends up with you nearly being killed, maybe don't date that guy. But anyway, but he tries to kind of like flies her and she drops. But the whole time she's having this weird inner monologue thing where she's like, "Can you read my mind?" And she's like, "If you need a friend, if you need a lover," you know, it's a very awkward scene that would probably play better without the voiceover, but it's really silly. Margot Kidder, however, is great as Lois Lane. She plays a really wonderful, gives a really wonderful performance in this, and every performance she gives as Lois Lane has been quite good. She's unfortunately also passed away. I think everybody in this movie has passed away except for Gene Hackman. And I'm gonna knock on wood, because now that I've said that, I killed Robin Williams. So, I mean, I didn't kill Robin Williams, but the night before he passed away, I decided out of the blue to watch Death to Smoochie, put it on Facebook, and then he unfortunately committed suicide that night, apparently. So the next day, I woke up to a friend of mine tagging me in a post, tagging me in a Robin Williams has died post, saying, "See what you get for watching Death to Smoochie." And I was like, oh my God. Funny story. Doc, in Las Vegas, actually, Doc had a moment like that where he hit a jackpot on a minor jackpot on a slot machine. And at that exact moment, a massive earthquake hit Japan. And I kind of made the joke, like, "See what happens, Doc?" And he actually was kind of pale, and he's like, "Oh my God." Like, he literally kind of took that seriously. He's like, this is sort of kismet. It's sort of, one man's luck is another man's misfortune. It was actually kind of moving, and of course I think we all went to take naps in our respective hotel rooms, and my roommate Bill was glued to the news because I don't think Bill sleeps, but I don't think I ever saw him sleep, and I was rooming with him for days, and I don't think he ever slept, but I'm pretty sure he's not human, but I love you, Bill, but anyway, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. So I'm gonna knock on wood and be like, Gene Hackman, please survive another day. But Hackman, and so Lois Lane's great as, Margot Kidder is great as Lois Lane. I keep losing my train of thought because I keep digressing, and digression is sort of what I do, and hopefully that is interesting. But I do apologize for the massive amounts of digression. That's is kind of what I do. So anyway, Lois Lane, yes, Margot Kidder is Lois Lane. She's great. We have some other major character actors. I think Glenn Ford plays Superman's Pa Kent, Superman's father, married to Martian Manhunter, according to the more recent thing. This will call out to my three-eyed cats buddies. Martian Manhunter is Superman's mom, which you'll get if you watch a certain Justice League movie that came out recently. But yes, but basically the idea is that the idea of the plot of the movie is that Clark is sent to Earth by Jor-El, played by Marlon Brando, probably part of the influence of Mario Puzo being involved. Brando plays Jor-El, Superman's father, sends him to Earth. Krypton's dying. including what would have been in any other modern movie would have actually been the stinger at the beginning of the movie, where he sentences the 3 Kryptonian criminals to the Phantom Zone, one of which is played by Terrence Stamp. Then they come back in the sequel, obviously, and become the main villains, and they're the inspiration for the Man of Steel movie, which is the Kryptonian criminals who were banished in the Phantom Zone show up. So it's interesting that the stinger happens at the beginning of the movie in the prologue rather than the epilogue. Clark is sent to Earth. He's found by a kindly elderly couple, because Superman's parents were always elderly until recent modern era. Much like Peter Parker's Aunt May was always elderly until, in every iteration of Spider-Man since then has been like a younger and younger and younger actress, to the point where she's now being played by Marissa Tomei. But in this movie, they're kind of elderly. And they raise him to be kind of a nice guy. And they have a great conversation he has a great conversation with his father that doesn't involve any Ayn Randian don't placate mediocrity allegories, much like Man of Steel, where his father says, you're here for a reason. His father then passes away of a heart attack, and Clark is upset, couldn't save him. Clark then goes to find out who he is, spends 12 years, it's a little silly, again, where he's been 12 years, talking to Jor-El, who's now a computer programmer, what have you, in the Fortress of Solitude in Alaska. He spends 12 years there learning the ways of Krypton and about his powers, and then comes out with the Superman suit, goes out to become Superman, and gets the job that he had planned as Clark Kent, falls for Lois Lane pretty quickly. Everybody loves him. And his portrayal of Clark Kent is unbelievably good. He's so goofy and so earnest and so sweet that it truly is what Clark Kent's supposed to be. He's supposed to be the kind of guy, kind of a nerd. He's kind of lame, and that's wonderful. It's a wonderful performance across the board by Reeve. Ultimately, he then becomes Superman, and then he kind of discovers that Lex Luthor, played by Gene Hackman. Now, Hackman, wonderful actor, little miscast as Lex. If you are familiar with Lex from the comics, you won't recognize much of him in Hackman. But he plays the role well enough in context, where he's supposed to kind of be the opposite of Superman. Where Superman has all his power, he's using it for good. Lex has an incredible intellect that he's using to basically conquer the real estate market by destroying the entire western seaboard, where just beyond the San Andreas Fault, on the other side of it is all his worthless land. And when California kind of sinks into the ocean as a result of his missiles being dropped onto the San Andreas Fault, he then will basically own the West Coast. And Superman isn't going to have it. I should have written it down. This is why I wanted to record this a week ago. He calls him, he says something to Lex. I wish I could remember. I can't now, but he calls Lex something terrible, like piece of human garbage or something to that effect. And James always loved it. Doc always loved it. But anyway, and there's some really wonderful moments. But Superman ultimately then saves the day by flying back in time to prevent it, and the day is saved. Now again, that's really silly. The Lois Lane talking thing, really silly. However, both of those could have their roots in the Golden Age. And normally, when I do these things, or when I talk about comics, I want to talk about a specific story that influenced the film. In this case, it's probably the other way around. Donner's film kind of changed the game a lot for Superman as a character, to the point where a lot of the books based on Superman, books about Superman, were kind of based on this film. So, but the Golden Age era of Superman, there have been a number of parodies and jokes. If you go online, you'll find them. Super Dickery was one, which features comic book covers of Superman doing mean things, like giving Lois a spanking, or help me, Lois Lane saying, like, help me, Superman, I'm about to be eaten by a monster. And Superman's like, you should have thought of that before you tagged along. And of course, the entire thing, his covers were never actually representative of the story in reality. It was all meant to sell a book. You know, it was advertising. But Superman, but yeah, and or you can read, I think, like Sean Baby, who invented being funny on the internet. Another pseudo inspiration of mine. Wrote for crack.com. I think he actually would include at least one Golden Age Superman story in any article he wrote about silly stuff from comics. Would usually feature like Superman creating a smaller version of himself, or being able to summon rainbow powers, or all these things that he could do, because in reality, Superman in the Golden Age, they didn't have any idea about scale or creating a shared universe. They had no interest in that at the time. You got to keep that in mind. That and so ultimately he could do whatever he wanted. They were like, anything he felt like doing, he could just do. So that's a real influence, I think, on this film, in the sense that he's able to turn back time. He, you know, maybe he is reading Lois's mind when she's flying with him. We don't know. He doesn't seem to notice, but that's sort of the point of her speech. Is she's like, are you reading my mind? I have no idea if you can do that. And we don't know that if he can do that either, because he never actually says, no, I can't read your mind, or yes, I can. He would also gain the ability in later films to make Lois forget he was Clark Kent by kissing her, which of course, like Robot Chicken, I think, did a parody of, where he started going around kissing all of his villains to get them to forget why they were mad at him. And they'll fall in love with him. That's the end of the joke. But all this stuff was all Golden Age stuff. It was that he literally could do anything they wanted him to do, he could do. The other thing that gets a little uncomfortable about Superman the movie, and that this will probably be one of the last things I mention before I wrap up, is there's some uncomfortable Jesus allegories going on in this movie, and that's revisited in Superman Returns, which is also an okay movie with a good Superman, but not a lot else. Brandon Routh is a great Superman. He proves that he actually did reprise the role in Crisis on Infinite Earths, which I'd love to cover at some point too. That was a lot of fun. A lot of references to cover in that, but it was a fun story. At least the parts of it that were. Some of it wasn't. But Routh played, revisited the Donner Superman character in that, and did an exemplary job once again, as he did in Superman Returns. But the idea of, like, you know, to the point where Jor-El is, you know, even mentioning Superman, and, you know, I have sent my only son, among them. He will save them from themselves, you know, you know, it's a little on the nose. I mean, we all know Superman is a godlike, you know, demigod being. As I noted before, one of the most popular criticisms you'll ever hear is Superman is boring. He's not relatable. Batman is where it's at. And the older that I get, the more I'm like, I don't even like Batman. I'm like a Superman guy now. As I get older, I'm like the symbol, what it means to be Superman, what he means to people, what he means to the world that he lives in, and what he technically means to our world, what he could represent. He's the ultimate. He's the greatest hero who ever lived, and that, you know, of course, like I said, he reminds me now of Doc. To kind of sum up, you know, to kind of come full circle here, you know, that Doc was a guy who would do anything for anybody, anything that he could, and he wouldn't ask for anything in return. He wouldn't, you know, he didn't want thanks. You know, he wanted to do good, wanted to be a good man. Filthy mouth, good man. Superman, however, is, you know, he's the Boy Scout, and he's been reinterpreted. He's been deconstructed many times, and he always manages to remain relevant. And as I said, Doomsday Clock, which I kind of mentioned and didn't mention again, talked a lot about that, the idea that Superman is always necessary, not only within his universe but in ours. He always has to be that symbol. The symbolism that he represents has to be there, and it will always be there. It will just be mildly reinterpreted. Superman will never go away. Never. I know they're doing other stuff now to kind of, you know, in DC Comics, like his son is now going to be Superman, I guess. I don't know much about that. I know that, I don't know where Clark is. I think he's still a member of the Justice League. But I think he retired the Clark Kent identity too. which is interesting. That's all fun. I mean, I haven't really read a Superman comic in a long time, but as I get older, the more I appreciate that character and appreciate what that symbol means. And so Superman the movie, it's dated, it's long, it kind of drags in some places, it really does, but it's still a beautiful film with a lot of beautiful ideas and a wonderful, wonderful performance by a wonderful, wonderful actor in Christopher Reeve, who again is tragically passed away. So that pretty much wraps up my time. This episode was kind of all over the place. I do apologize for that. Long on sentiment, short on analysis, but check out Superman the movie. It is on HBO Max. Be forewarned, if you are a younger person, that you have to be willing to go along with this ride, because otherwise you will be kind of bored. The sequels actually might be more up your alley because they're kind of silly and fun. At some point, I'd love to talk about Superman 4. And you know what? It's my show. I probably will. I can do whatever I want. It's my show. But you can watch it. And yes, I just paraphrased Jerry Seinfeld, and I don't like that. But voice is starting to give out. Scratchy throat. Had a long day at work today. So with that, I will say, as always, do the reading, do the research. Wonderful, wonderful Superman comics out there for you to read. You know, he's just a character that's always going to be worth something, and always should be. So thank you very much for watching. Hope I didn't bore you. And as I say at the end of every episode, you know, when you love, you are loved in return, and the rest is all confetti. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time here on Maladapted Automaton.